Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 24th of November 2014, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson.
Afternoon.
And behind the technical desk is Nick Green. So thank you very much for joining us. Well, the weather here in Plymouth, very cold start. We've been trying to scrape the ice off our cars, and that seems the pattern across the country. So we've got reports of cold, very cold, and very cold indeed, but it seems most people enjoying a bit of sunshine. Anybody watching from north of the border, perhaps you'd let us know, because at the moment we're only getting reports from South England and, England and Wales. Well, a fairly mixed bag of news, if we can call it that, Mike.
Yep.
So where are we going first? Global meltdown, I think.
Yes, so economy first. This is Liam Halligan speaking in the writing in the Telegraph yesterday, warning about the Bank of Japan's recent announcement of massive quantitative easing, more money printing, more money pumping, and he's sort of highlighting the fact that Cameron at the G20 had been talking about, or just after the G20, been talking about a possible future global financial collapse. Glad he's finally caught up with that, but Liam Halligan here pointing out that perhaps this Bank of Japan move may be the trigger, and he's saying we must now, on top of what Cameron said, we must now add yet another risk to the litany of potential dangers dragging down global growth, which could spark a 2008-style systemic meltdown, and that additional risk is Japan. He says QE does almost nothing to secure meaningful, sustainable growth. It's all about competitive currency depreciation and governments avoiding tough decisions as central banks buy sovereign bonds, to say nothing of backdoor bank bailouts. This is as true in Japan as it is everywhere else, only more so. And he finishes off by saying the danger is, though, that Japan's QE program is now so vast that it could cause a wave of panic, particularly if rising Japanese interest rates spark fears of further monetization, causing a sharp fall in the yen, which leads to a downward spiral. The red warning lights are certainly flashing. Cameron was right, and probably more than he knew. So it is, I think he's more or less got that on the button, but none of these people are doing anything or making any real recommendations. Actually, Liam Halligan is one of the better financial journalists in the sense that he's pushing for full bank separation, but at the end of the day, these suggestions from the likes of Halligan aren't being brought through by the regulators and by the politicians.
Yeah,
that's up to us to sort that out, I think.
And I don't think we've reported it, but we were reading reports last week of another banker dying, I think being found with his throat cut in the bath in New York.
That would have been a suicide then.
Well, we wait to see, but the number of bankers who have mysteriously died, committed suicide, jumped off buildings, but of course there is no connection between this. It's, presumably it's sort of winter flu and the bankers are killing themselves or being killed, or something nasty's on its way.
Yeah, well, Royal Bank of Scotland then, in trouble today because they've been caught lying to Parliament, but of course, they weren't lying. They simply gave incorrect evidence. And this was evidence which lacked clarity. And this was relating to the RBS's Global Restructuring Group. And Derek Sack there on the left-hand side was head of that group. And in fact, I believe he has been sacked now. But GRG, if you remember, was the part of RBS which was allegedly deliberately shutting down profitable businesses in order to asset strip them, because GRG was actually a profit-making centre itself, although it was being promoted as being something which was there to help businesses with their futures. So this is a result of a newly released letter which shows that the chairman, Sir Philip Hampton, after this evidence was given, I believe it was back in June, to the Treasury Committee, said that some of the evidence lacked clarity. The Treasury Committee's chairman, Andrew Tirry, said that the evidence was unacceptable, but nobody is really saying anything about lies or any of that stuff. So, but this is perhaps because the bank is state-owned. Maybe if you're state-owned, you're allowed to go into Parliament and lie about things. But anyway, So it went on. Of course, it's not all over for RBS because they're in trouble in other areas as well. Today, the Times is announcing that they're facing a £30 million lawsuit over LIBOR rigging, and this is Property Alliance Group suing RBS over the alleged missale of complex derivatives that were meant to protect the business from a rise in interest rates, according to the Times. But this is not the only organisation doing that, because Bloomberg, when was that? That was August, saying that RBS is also being sued by a student housing firm over LIBOR. And actually, if you read down through this story, it turns out that RBS being sued by 3 other companies along the same sort of lines. And of course, this is related to the interest rate swap products, these products that have been sold to various businesses in an effort to hedge against future interest rate rises. But of course, RBS doing everything that they could to make sure that those interest rates didn't rise, but they were manipulating the derivatives contracts in the background.
I'd just say, Mike, it's very interesting here that you've got companies suing the banks. So we've got no criminal cases against the banks. This is a bit like the cover-up of child abuse. You drive it into the civil courts so that, somebody was a bit naughty, they fiddled interest rates, few people lost millions of pounds. Don't worry about that. It's only a civil action. No criminal stuff takes place.
Well, as we mentioned on Friday, I think it was Mark Carnage was saying that we're way past the point where we can say it was just a few bad apples, that in fact the whole barrel is the problem. So they are throwing a few bad apples to the wolves. I think 1 or 2 cases of people being taken to court.
And Mark Carnage is not part of the barrel either.
No, of course not. No, nor the regulators, nor George Osborne or the Treasury. Mm-hmm. So,
that's a relief.
Yes, isn't it just? So, but related to economic issues, and this is on the mainland of Europe. This was sent to us by email, and thanks very much for that. I'll just give a rough Google translation of this, but this is the University of Ghent saying, this winter there is a risk that electricity is switched off in certain zones. Ghent University takes preventative measures so that you do not suffer any discomfort during the exams in January. To avoid uncontrolled power outages across the country, certain regions across the country will have electricity turned off from 5 o'clock in the evening until 8 o'clock in the evening, and therefore the university is making sure that all exams are completed by 4:15 in the afternoon. So this is a pretty, I haven't seen any of the sort of mainstream news talking about this, Brian, but this is a pretty interesting little news release for students at the University of Ghent, where basically they're being told, we won't have the electricity to heat the room while exams go on if they go into the evening.
And fascinating, this follows on after the leaflets that were put through our doors about cuts in electricity. Yeah. Nothing to worry about. It was just the local distribution company saying, there may be cuts and we want you to have a little fridge magnet so you don't forget our number. So coincidence, do we think something else is going in?
I think something else is going on.
Or is something planned?
Something, indeed.
Well, I'm sure Cameron's got the solution to it. We'd just like to bring your attention back to the fact that it took a tweet from David Cameron to pick up on the fact that he'd caved into the European Union. Instead of paying them 1.7 billion, which is what they were asking for out of nowhere, David Cameron tweeted, "I said we wouldn't pay 1.7 billion on December the 1st. We've now halved the bill and we'll pay nothing until next July. We're delivering for Britain." So that's what he tweeted out. Just thought bring your attention to some of the mainstream media reports here. So the Mail here saying that this was pure smoke and mirrors over the EU bill. That's another word, that's another expression for lying. Critics say that the reduction had been achieved only by bringing forward a rebate to which the UK would have been entitled anyway. So you can call it lies, you can call it spin. We haven't got money to put into our electricity infrastructure. Where's the money going? Simply hand it away to the European Union, which after 18 years has still not produced a a signed off set of accounts because it's so corrupt. So blatant malfeasance in public office by David Cameron and George Osborne, criminal offence. We could solve the problem pretty quickly. But let's have a look at what the Tory party's about, and the Independent here pointing out back in 2009, dinner at the Colt and the new Tory power brokers. So bear in mind where Mike has taken us this morning, talking about the banks and the power of the banks. Let's just have a look at this article. Should be able to bring in just a video clip. You can freeze this if you want to have a look at the detail. But we've got Northern Rock, we've got bankers, we've got hedge fund people. This goes on, and it's a list of immensely wealthy and powerful people. There's nothing to do with ordinary society in any sense.
So this is the list of people that are paying money to have dinner with Cameron. Is that right?
Well, it was a dinner event, especially for people who donated to the Tory party. And if you freeze this and have a look at the individuals, they're all from the banking fraternity, hedge funds, immensely wealthy global corporations. So why would these people want the Tories in power? Presumably it's because they're doing their bidding. The long list of names at the end is the full guest list, if you're wondering exactly what that is. But there we go. So we've got the corporate agenda controlling the Tory party. We've simply got the banks, whether it's Mr. Carnage himself or other bankers, lying about their activities. Meanwhile, we can't give electricity or feed ourselves, as we'll see in a minute.
Well, indeed, because the Joseph Rowntree Foundation has released a press release today saying that basically record numbers of families in poverty due to low-paid jobs. They're saying that insecure, low-paid jobs are leaving huge numbers of people in poverty. 2/3 of people who've found work in the last year are getting paid less than what's called the living wage. And that's according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, as I say. The living wage is calculated at £7.85 an hour that's for the UK in general, and £9.15 if you're living in London. And of course, that's quite a bit higher than the £6.50 minimum wage. But of course, it's all right because the government has this long-term economic plan, which has provided 1.7 million more people with the security of a pay packet. But the pay packet, unfortunately, is mostly empty. So that is, government doesn't see that as a problem because at least people are in work on the hamster wheel, running as fast as they can, not able to look around them and see what's really going on because they're so busy actually working 4 or 5 of these jobs to try and get a decent income at the end of the day.
So, sorry, just to interject there, Mike. So this is the Conservatives, and of course it's saying share the facts. Trust us. This is the Conservative page.
Yes, they indeed share the facts. 1.7 million more people in work. But I mean, I have been saying, many people have been saying for the last year or two, 1.7 million more jobs. What type of jobs are we talking about? And it's really the quality of the jobs that we're talking about here. If they aren't going to provide high-value jobs to people that actually allow people to earn a decent living, then they're not doing their jobs for us. So at the end of the day, we've got to get these people to do their jobs, which is to provide an economy which can provide jobs to the rest of us.
Yeah.
But coffee serving and shelf stacking ain't it.
Well, very interesting. Let's keep that in our minds that according to the Conservatives there, they're talking about facts and 1.7 more people with good jobs. So let's pop across to this one, and thank you very much to the viewer that sent it through to us. It's Pride's Purge, irreverent look at UK politics. And what they're pointing out is that people are starving to death in the UK on David Cameron's doorstep. But surely this can't be right, Mike. I mean, we decided to have a little look into this article. And, we're going to say this is factually correct. The Green Party has a public meeting, austerity kills. It's on David Cameron's doorstep. So the meeting's 7:30 this coming Thursday, the 27th of November, in Langdale Hall, Market Square, Witney, David Cameron's very own constituency. And what is this about? Well, it's about people literally dying because they can't feed themselves due to austerity cuts. Now, let's remember that also on David Cameron's doorstep was the abuse, sexual and physical abuse of youngsters at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, now renamed the City of Oxford College, part of Activate Learning. So David Cameron wasn't interested in the abuse of youngsters. There was simply a clampdown, a silence by the local Tories. Now we've got something particularly horrible. Let's have a look at what actually happened. Well, this is the first gentleman, Mark Wood, who lived in Bampton. He struggled to manage. Okay, he was a Green Party member. And he gets ATOS assessed, and suddenly they declare him fit for work, strip away his benefits, his doctor not consulted, and eventually he dies weighing a little over 5 stone. Welcome to David Cameron's Britain 2014. And the other gentleman here, I've taken this off the website, so do go and visit that website to read this for yourself. David Clapson had been a soldier and in work virtually all of his life. Then he missed an appointment with the Department of Work and Pension. His benefits are stopped, electricity cut off, no means of keeping in the insulin he required, and he starves to death and leaves 6 tea bags, a tin of sardines, a can of tomato soup, and £3.44 in the bank. So what have we got here? Well, let's just Google David Cameron and eating to see what the comparison is. And you can find page after page of Google pictures of David Cameron eating his ice creams, state banquets, sitting down to stuffed fish and chips with Obama. This has got to be the most unbelievable hypocrisy from this disgusting individual.
He must be mentally ill.
What, eating McDonald's?
Just eating, just while people are starving to death in the country, he's supposed to be looking after these people. I
don't think he knows. I honestly think that these people are so detached from reality. Does David Cameron really understand what goes on in the country? I don't think he's got a clue. He's done his public school education. He's been groomed by Ken Clarke to appear in politics. He's now isolated in Westminster, jet setting to G20. Girls provided, as we showed last week. Do you really think David Cameron knows what goes on in the country? I don't think so. You could say buffoon, but it's the people behind the scenes pulling the strings. But let's have a look in detail at the Conservatives' Witney constituency. And we'd just like to show you these photographs. So we've got Mayor and Conservative Councillor Jeanette Baker, and they went off on a trip to unite us with Europe. So I believe this is taken in southern Germany somewhere. There's the lady ringed at the centre. We just like to say no shortage of food and drink. Certainly no shortage of food and drink here. They're busy stuffing themselves. And of course, this is to do with European integration. And, well, here's the lady herself. You can just about make her out behind the very large stein of beer. Thank you for that. And we just say, if you're unsure what to vote, then I think it's pretty easy, because if you want sheer hypocrisy and you want to waste public money while people starve, then do get out there and vote Conservative, because you can make a real difference. We can have more of this stuff. UK column says you want people to starve, you want people unable to pay, no jobs, just vote for David Cameron.
Indeed.
Or should you be voting for Nick Clegg?
Well, that's another question. I did ask whether these people are mentally ill, and I think I can't think of anyone better, therefore, to host a mental health Q&A. This is being hosted as we speak, actually. It may be over by now, today on Facebook, on mine's Facebook page. This is because apparently the UK is spending £100 billion a year dealing with mental illness. And I think we probably start off with MPs' expenses. I mean, I shouldn't really be making fun of this because it is a serious issue. On the other hand, it is a serious issue which is being systematically politicized at the moment. And I'm interested in comments from you about why that might be at this particular time, 6 months before a general election, why they're politicizing this issue in the way that they are.
Well, personally, Mike, I believe that the system, the establishment, is now getting so desperate. They're throwing every bit of their plan into the pot. So we had applied behavioural psychology to control people. We're destroying families. We're trying to say at the moment that 1 in 4 people in the UK is mentally ill. Just think about that. A nation state where over a quarter of the people have got mental health issues. Is that true? Personally, I don't believe so in the slightest, but I think these people are actually deliberately driving society into mental health problems because, of course, the moment you're branded with a mental health problem, everything can be taken from you, your home, your family, your children. And Clegg, very dangerous man because, of course, he's the sort of silent grey man. People think he's silly, but he sat there in the Privy Council making these policies.
Well, I just wanted to read something that Clegg said here because I find it a staggering comment. Mental health affects every aspect of our lives. 1 in 4 people in the UK will experience a mental health problem, and it costs the country more than £100 billion. This is too big an issue for the NHS to deal with alone. The whole of government needs to combine its efforts and pool its resources to help the millions of people whose mental health condition is preventing them from getting on in life. The whole of government.
Yes, well, I think the expression is those whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. I believe that is a well-known quote. Somebody can check me out on that. But this is an attack on our minds. This is not out there to help people because, as we've just shown, we've got 2 people in a pretty perilous state, starving to death. Well, where were all the major charities? Where was Mind? Where was the rest of them? Of course, not to be seen because these are politicised charities. This is the third sector.
Indeed.
But, yeah. And we still haven't actually found out what Nick Clegg is. Is he Spanish, Russian, Dutch? Is he British at all?
Don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Well, okay, let's have a look at the next scam that's coming through the media in UK. And here we've got the Express. It's exposing, it's in capitals. I think that's helping to say this is a true exposure, that Vladimir Putin has got a secret plot to rule Europe. So never mind about David Cameron or Merkel or the European Union. The man who's actually plotting to take over Europe is Putin. And apparently he's going to do this by using his state-controlled banks to get in amongst all of the conservative parties in Europe. And they're going to lure them in with low-rate interest loans and finance. And in no time at all, Putin is going to have taken over the whole of the European Union, and he's going to have, we're all going to be under Russian rule, basically.
Well, can I just say I look forward to that because he's going to do a better job than David Cameron or Angela Merkel is doing.
Yeah. Well, if the propaganda wasn't so pathetic, we are laughing at it. I mean, who makes this drivel up? And of course, it comes hot on the heels of the fact that we've been warned by the British government that we're all going to be seduced by very attractive Russian women, well, and Chinese. If they haven't got enough Russian women, they're going to be bussing in these women who are going to seduce us all, and we're going to be in a terrible state no time at all. It's absolute rubbish. It's unbelievable. So watch out for Putin. Meanwhile, what's happening in Russia?
Well, you know, we have been mentioning coloured revolutions. Obviously, we've got the Ukrainian situation, which is being driven by the EU. We mentioned on Friday that Hungary is the next target for this. And we've also been mentioning for quite some time the fact that various NGOs, including Soros's Open Society NGOs, are working in Russia to bring about regime change. This is the first real public statement I've seen from Russian government themselves, accusing the West of specifically regime change. And this is Lavrov saying, As for the concept behind the use of coercive measures, the West is making clear it does not want to force Russia to change policy, but wants to secure regime change. He went on to say, now public figures in Western countries say there is a need to impose sanctions that will destroy the economy and cause public protests. So that's a very strong statement that they are intending to destroy the Russian economy in order to cause public protests. So quite an overt statement from the Russian government about how they feel what's going on in their own country is being driven by the West.
The proof of this is in watching the non-government organisations which go out from the West to establish themselves in the former Russian states or even in Russia itself. British Council is one of the key troublemakers. But we've also pointed out, of course, that the BBC has been openly boasting through BBC Media Action that it can get its charities into unstable countries in order to help create further instability.
Yeah.
And classic example is the BBC getting into Kazakhstan. And what did they want to do? Inject a Kazakhstan version of Crossroads in order to bring in the cultural change. So you bring in banking, the ideas of banking, you bring in diversity, you bring in all of the hot topics that we've got here, drifted into Kazakhstan on the back of the BBC subversion. And I'll just say that one or two of our chat box viewers have suggested that alongside the attractive Russian and Chinese women, it would only be fair if there's some attractive Russian and Chinese men. So we are thinking of the ladies, but be careful because this is the entrapment that the government is warning us about. Well, of course, Homeland Security falls on Theresa May, and it's taken the BBC to actually point out that they slipped through Parliament by a mere 421 votes to 29, the European arrest warrant, and a package of 35 other EU justice powers. So drifted in through Parliament. We've obviously got no party politics going on at all, because that was a block vote to bring in the European legislation. But how does the BBC report this? Well, it does it by saying what Mrs. May told Desert Island Disc. So never mind somebody can be pulled out of their home in Britain on charges they've no idea what they are, shipped overseas to trial in a European country, and that could be for a crime which doesn't actually exist in Britain. No, we're not bothered about that. The BBC focuses in on Desert Island Discs, and it discusses what clothes Theresa May likes to wear. It discusses how her husband has been her rock, and it discusses some of the problems that she's had, being a woman in Parliament. So we're going to say classic BBC nudging, get people's attention away from the really dangerous issues and get them onto complete dross. Well, we can follow that up with this article from The Guardian. And it's quite an interesting article where it's being pointed out that many people are asking for restrictions on reporting over Dunblane to be lifted. And the Lord Advocate in Scotland, Colin Boyd QC, has actually said, well, we will pump out some documents, but we've got to redact children's names. Other people are saying, well, actually, it's nothing to do with children's names. This is the government covering up what really happened. And Michael Matheson, SNP Shadow Justice Minister, has been questioning whether enough material is going to be released. But of course, let's remember that it was the Daily Mail pointing out that the Tories were removing a great deal of information from their own website, pre-election speeches, and we mirrored it up here with the fact that Kim Jong-un, as opposed to David Cameron, were also removing material. So when the state is going to hide the truth, our personal liberties are under direct attack, is what we would say. So let's just drift back to Theresa May and a few photographs that have appeared I'm not sure of the source of these, so if anybody would like to tell us where they've actually come from, we'll acknowledge that. But the important thing is we've got Theresa May standing next to independent failed child abuse chairman Fiona Woolf. Obviously, they didn't know each other at all, totally independent. And there's another picture here showing that they're totally independent. And if you say, well, okay, at least Miss Woolf has stood down, we'd just like to say, let's remember that Theresa May is happily married to her banking husband, Philip May. He appears to be quite shy, actually. Can't find a lot on him on the internet. But there we are. Trust the Tories at all stages.
Indeed. Well, we may not be aware, but this is, in fact, Terrorism Awareness Week. And this is a report from the Metropolitan Police explaining that they are, in fact, getting involved in Terrorism Awareness Week. Sorry for not getting rid of the cookie message there. Should have done that. So they're joining officers from across the country to take part in National Counter-Terrorism Awareness Week, which launches in London today. 3,000 police men and women involved, they say officers, and they are going to brief thousands of businesses, shopping centres, cinemas, sports stadiums, and explain to them how to step up their security and train their staff at venues across London. There are going to be high visibility patrols. There are going to be operations in transport hubs, visits to faith centres. And throughout this week, the police, apparently, according to this press release, are focusing on 5 key areas where action by police, businesses and the public can prevent terrorism. And those are vigilance in crowded places and transport hubs, preventing violent extremism, cutting off terrorist financing, and preventing access to tools that terrorists need to operate. Can I just say that in terms of cutting off terrorist financing, the best way to do that would be to stop paying your tax. If you want to cut terrorist financing, that would be probably the best way to do it. And police will be speaking to students in schools and universities about what they're calling their PREVENT strategy, which provides practical help to stop people being drawn into terrorism. Some jobs, some future might be another option for practical help to avoid people being drawn into terrorism, future careers, these kind of things. And apparently police dogs will be detecting large amounts of money at ports and airports. I'd like to know how they know that. But the police dogs are going to be detecting large amounts of money at ports and airports and railway stations to prevent cash from leaving the UK for terrorist purposes.
They'll be sniffing out all the children's Christmas chocolate money, those little coins in.
Yeah, they're not making chocolate money anymore. You didn't watch the programme a couple of weeks ago, but they're not making chocolate money anymore.
Quantitative easing?
No, because we're moving to a cashless society and you don't want to promote cash to children at that anymore.
Okay. Well, there we are.
There you go.
I missed that one. Well, I think part of this terrorism alert has come from a gentleman who's ex-armed forces. Apparently he's been over in Syria rescuing young men, as you do, from jihadist cause. So we'll cover that tomorrow, but it appears that we've got people who simply slide across into Syria. They can meet all sorts of people. They're quite safe. Nobody shoots at them. But this gentleman with his qualifications, we're not sure what those are at the moment, but he's telling Britain that we've got jihadists now popping up in every location across the country. So we'll certainly be checking our understairs cupboard here at the UK Column offices. Right, meanwhile, what are the domestic terrorists doing from Westminster? And a big thank you to the viewer that sent us in this. It's pointless art in King's Lynn. And this was the email that came through. I shall read it for our listening audience. Hello, Brian. You've recently asked viewers of UK Column News to send you examples of pointless municipal art. Well, here in King's Lynn, in the Walks, the main park in the town, they've stuck 5 logs in the ground. The excuse appears to be that they have drumsticks on top of them which commemorate the birth of Roger Taylor of Queen fame in the town. Since the project has been funded by the European Commission, I therefore nominate it for the award of the most pointless piece of municipal art in the country. Well, what's this gentleman talking about? Well, this is what pointless art looks like. I think he's having a little bit of a pun there with the fact that these are clearly pointed. And we've discussed this in the office. We think they are logs. We think that they've been put in the ground in a vertical position, and we think they are in a straight line, and they do appear to have sharp points. So this is clearly artwork, but we thought rather than just look at the view, we'd get a bit deeper. Well, thank you very much to our viewer who photographed the plaque that goes with this. And we can see that this is part of Art, Cities and Landscapes, and it's part of Axis Mundi UK. So what is that, we wondered? Well, here you are. So we can go to a whole website which is talking about the artistic value of logs put in the ground in a vertical position, in a line. And this is not just about UK, because if you can see top right, it mentions the European Union and one of the European Union's funding streams, Interreg. Now, if you're beginning to think UK Column News has gone slightly doolally, it's nothing to do with Nick Clegg and his work on Mind. Stay with us as to where this goes. We've got pieces of wood in the ground. This is being supported by the EU Commission and Interreg. Let's have a look at the other website. Here it is. This is artcitieslandscape.com, which is where this thing came from. And it's telling us that all across southern England and France, we're going to have more of this outstanding art for a reason. What's the reason? Well, the reason is this is part of Interreg EU funding, and they're talking here about what that cooperation programme is. So brace yourselves, because this is what the £850 million that David Cameron's given the EU, this is how we're going to get it back. So it's a strategy for the cooperation programme's contribution to the Union strategy for smart, sustainable and inclusive growth and the achievement of economic, social and territorial cohesion.
What does that mean?
Well, we're going to show you what it means, because this is the EU saying that they're going to use applied behavioural psychology, in my opinion, to nudge us towards believing in a totally new society where we're not really in England, we're actually somewhere in France. So what sort of area are we talking about here? Well, they get very excited because this is the France brackets Channel England Cooperation Programme, 2014 to 2020. And they're saying that it's a very wealthy area with about 23.7 million, lots of money. And this is the UK being linked directly into France. And which areas? Cornwall, Isle of Scilly, Devon, Dorset, Hampshire, West Sussex, East Sussex, Kent, Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, Wiltshire, Somerset, Surrey, Cambridgeshire, Plymouth, Torbay, Bournemouth, Poole, Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, Southampton, Brighton and Hove, Medway, Thurrock, and Southend-on-Sea, Peterborough and Swindon. So if you thought a few logs were just rubbish, well, we've started to show what's really behind it, which is a massive integration programme. And here's the Channel Art March. And so in this wonderful eye, you can see highlighted in yellow and light grey the area of southern England and northern France, which as far as the EU is concerned, is going to become one administrative area. And the power base for that, of course, is not in England. It happens to be in northern France. You can visit the website yourself and actually have a look at the objectives. But apart from anything else, the final objective is developing a knowledge of the Channel area. So we've lived in Plymouth for quite a long time. We think we understand where the Channel is. We understand where the Channel Islands are. Ted Heath used to go there quite a lot. But according to this massive EU funding programme, if you live in southern England, you're not too sure what the Channel's about.
Well, indeed.
Do we tell our audience we have a slight disagreement about this? because I've said for quite a long time I thought the Channel Tunnel was a very bad idea because it gave the European Union the chance to creep in overnight via railway wagons. But Mike's for it.
I don't think you can blame the tunnel for that.
We'll leave it there. So it started out with a few tree trunks put in the ground, follow through the funding. Where does it lead us? To a massive part of the European Union project. This is the European Union by stealth.
Right, so let's talk about another aspect of this agenda, which, although not EU in nature, is still creeping up on us. So this is the Fabian Society, and they have an event tonight from 6:30 to 8 p.m. In the Grand Committee Room off Westminster Hall at the House of Commons. And the event will launch A Convenient Truth, A Better Society for Us and the Planet, which is the latest pamphlet produced by the Fabian Society, but also by a German organisation whose name escapes me just at the moment. But this is being presented by Richard Wilkinson, who's a co-author of the report A Convenient Truth. And I just wanted to highlight the main sort of items that they are pushing for, this areas of policy that they're pushing for. And basically, they're requiring by law that all except the smallest companies should have employee representatives on company boards and remuneration committees. The proportion of employees on these bodies should be higher in companies with larger numbers of employees. The proportions of employees representatives on company boards and remuneration committees should be set to increase over time, moving eventually to majority control and beyond. This could be achieved by requiring that a small proportion of shares be transferred each year to employee-controlled trusts. Then they go on to say, before making either of these a legal requirement, conformity and provisions such as these could be made a condition of gaining public sector contracts or lower corporation tax rates. They say a major obstacle to the development of this sector is the lack of knowledge of these models among professional, legal and financial advisors. The Department for Business, Innovation and Skills should promote a single route to employee ownership and establish the necessary 17-point legislative support. The department should also provide a training and advice service for how to set up employee-owned and cooperative companies. A government should work out a complete package of measures to grow the democratic sector. So we've had the public sector, the private sector, the third sector. Now we're looking at the democratic sector, complete with tax incentives, sources of advice and support, ready-made rules of governance and sources of finance. The constitutions of employee-owned and cooperative businesses should in all cases be designed to prevent employees selling their companies back to external shareholders. Employees taking on new roles on company boards should need a variety of options for training in areas such as management, business law, accountancy and economics. Options should range from some of the learning schemes designed to prepare school governors to the provision of master's degrees to which people could be seconded. And finally, set up an internet portal to help people to do their shopping from democratic businesses and introduce a democratic company logo modelled on the fair trade example to increase visibility of these companies. So what we're actually looking at here is the steady merging of government and corporations, the corporatization of society beyond anything that we've ever seen before. So democracy now moving into the company structure, and a democratic sector, a fourth sector. This is
communitarianism.
Absolute communitarianism, yes.
Corporate, big corporations mixed in with a fascistic state, isn't it, basically? Yes. So if you're still not sure what David Cameron's big society was or is, this is it now coming to the surface, straight out of the Fabians, of course. And it's pretty serious stuff.
So if anybody's able to attend that, probably would be good to have somebody there if we can. That's tonight at 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the Grand Committee Room in the House of Commons. So do get there if you can. Might be interesting.
Okay, that brings us to the end of today's news. We'll just say that unfortunately Louise Collins is poorly at the moment, so it looks as though it will be an all-male cast for the rest of this week, but we'll have Louise back with us as soon as we can. And think about what we're talking about today, because the attack on Britain, the attack on each and every one of us and our families, is not an overt attack. This is a subversive attack. And of course, the wolf in sheep's clothing of the Fabian Society, perfect description of just the way they're trying to drift this through. So that's it for today. If you see any pointed sticks going in the ground, don't regard them as all bad, because possibly we may be able to use those in the future for mounting our politicians. More on that in due course. Thanks for joining us. See you same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.